Teaching around the world.
Hello, Stephen.
Hi, Jemina.
How are you?
I'm very well. What part of the camera are you looking at specifically?
There we
not
go.
on me. Okay.
I'm looking at your face.
My face?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Just our intro, just for something different while we're in Cambodia. We're going to answer gems. Do I talk about myself in the third person? It's my 12 quick questions from the back of a tuk-tuk. We're on the way to go and see one of my friends in Phnom Penh, Cambodia.
Gem's 12 quick questions. Teaching around the world. Question number 1. Number of students in your class?
My highest is 25 students.
My class this year, I'm very fortunate. I have 5 and I have 6, but next term the 6 will go up to 14 and I'm shaking in my boots.
What do your students call you?
My students call me Mr. Kolber initially and then eventually just Kolber as they become more comfortable with me and they realise that I think of it as a nickname and that I don't actually notice that it's informal.
I introduce myself as Mrs. Kolber. Sometimes I'll be called Miss Kolber or just Miss. Occasionally Mum. I enjoy it when that happens.
Occasionally I get Dad and I think that's pretty rare and I'm pretty pleased when it happens.
How many hours do you teach a day?
Quick questions.
My biggest teaching day.
Can you flip it?
Something. And we're moving again. Quick question. On my heaviest teaching day, I teach about 5 periods. 5 periods of 50 minutes each, and I have terrible numeracy skills, and I can't add that up.
For me, my busiest day at the moment is 2 periods, which is 72 times 2. Next term it'll be a lot more.
It's not teaching at all, really.
What's the best thing about being a teacher in your country?
For me, the best thing about being a teacher in Australia is the amount of information that we have freely available to us, the people who are willing to collaborate with limited time, and the excellence that we have within our system, though admittedly it's not replicated around the system as much as we'd like due to a lack of time.
What a local market looks like.
Some fish there. Tamarind. Mushroom. Little eggplants. Big eggplants.
I don't know. I wrote the questions and I don't know the answer.
What kind of teacher are you? You must always know the answer at all times.
Possibly the best thing about being a teacher, maybe not necessarily in the country. I can't speak for the country, but I can speak for my group of students in my school who come from a very middle class background. And being in Cambodia reminds me how privileged we are and how pretty decent our education system is. Possibly not, comparing it worldwide, but comparing it to more developing countries.
When does your school day start and finish?
When does your school day start and finish?
Well, that's an easy. That's an easy.
That's so easy.
That's an easy. My school day starts at, we need to be there at 8:40 a.m. and then we get to either leave at 3:40 or 4:20 if there's a meeting.
For me, my school day starts at 8:10 and I finish before it gets dark. The actual day starts at 9 and finishes at 3:22.
Well, yeah, that as well. So I arrive early, usually about 8 o'clock or before 8 o'clock, and sometimes I'm there till dark at the moment.
How many staff meetings per week?
For me, I have 3 staff meetings a week. 2 of those are necessary and 2 of them are sort of optional due to my role, and one of those 3 on the alternating 3 weeks is my union meeting that I run in theory once every 3 weeks.
I have 2 meetings. I have 2 meetings a week. Sometimes I have 3 because I'm in a leadership role, but then that doesn't take into account all of the kind of informal meetings that you have with your colleagues to talk about what you're teaching.
When is your big holiday and how long is it for?
Our big holiday is over Christmas and New Year, and so it starts in December, usually I think we're going pretty close to Christmas.
22,
yeah,
22nd.
we're going pretty close to Christmas this year, and then we'll start back normally about the end of January.
Or the 1st of Feb or something.
So we get about 5 weeks holiday.
What technology do you use in your classroom?
At my school we have a bring your own device policy, so students bring anywhere from iPads to tablets to computers. I have got a laptop computer. I can connect it to projectors or smart TVs in my classroom. And I think we're going to have a couple of interactive whiteboards put in shortly, but I've never really used one before.
So for me personally, I got 2 laptops, a school computer and a Surface Pro that I use, microphones, things like that. We've got projectors, some of them are wireless, which is pretty flash, but other than that it's pretty much just a projector and a computer to connect with. All students have a device which is pretty consistent, or sometimes a showier one if they've got it.
What is your most valuable teaching strategy?
Wow, such boring questions, right? For me, my most valuable teaching strategy is probably flip learning and using instructional video. So this has sort of revolutionised the way I teach, just because I can use my direct instruction via video and have students watch that at a time of their choosing, and then that frees me up to do things that are more interesting and explore new pedagogical techniques that I typically didn't have time for because I'd be standing at the whiteboard and talking for too long. So to me that's the key thing that's freed it up. The actual pedagogy that I use to fill in those gaps is still emerging and developing, so it's complicated to answer.
My most valuable teaching strategy, well, I don't know if it's a teaching strategy, but I've committed to doing Socratic circles in 2 of my classrooms this year, which really puts value on student voice and agency and asking them how they want to do things in the classroom. And it's kind of been really empowering for my students to have that kind of a voice.
How do you get to school?
Personally, I get to school in a tuk-tuk. What about you, Jem?
These past 2 weeks, we've gone to school in a tuk-tuk. But usually we both drive our cars to school.
Forget bike.
What is the biggest issue affecting education in your country?
Biggest issue affecting education in Australia, from my perspective, is probably funding and the disparity between students who are in a private school or in a government school, and the gap is only getting bigger. So the students who don't have enough funding, they just continue to get less funding than the more richer private schools. And I don't know that affects teaching quality, but it certainly affects resources, it certainly affects community perception, that's the word I'm looking for. So there are some people who believe that because they spend a lot of money on sending their children to private schools that they're going to get a better education, but that's not actually the reality.
For me, the issues for teachers are threefold. Not enough time as a result of too much face-to-face time compared to OECD averages.
Up to our eyeballs in face-to-face.
Inefficient and low-quality professional development, and not enough funding as a result of that. In my idea, professional learning should be free, or at least paid for by the department, and they should encourage us to complete scholarships and further things like that. Those 3 issues all knock onto the students, which mean we have great excellence within our system, but also great inequality, which is true of America, the UK, and all those sort of places. And that's something we need to work specifically at a system level to solve.
What's the one thing you want your future students to know about you?
For me, I'd like my future students to know that I care deeply about education, not just of their own, not just the students I'm educating, but the world beyond them as well. And I think we are just one small player within that, and my goal is to contribute beyond my classroom, break down the 4 walls and make our global community a little bit closer and a little bit more global than it is already. And so whether that benefits my students or not, I think it'll benefit their mindset and their understanding of the way the world works and the way that kindness is all around us.
One thing that I want my students to know about me, one thing that I want them to know about me is that I love my job, I love spending time with young people, I am inspired all the time by them and by my colleagues in education. I love my job. And secondly, that I believe that kindness being kind is one of the most important things that you can be as a human being, and it's something that I often talk to them about. If you have a choice, be kind.
Signing out from the back of a tuk-tuk. Boy.
Kolber